Welcome to the Success at Work virtual mentoring series. Today's installment is on having it all. And I am joined today by our Director of Music and Web, Amanda, along
Hello.
with along with our Director of Operations and Communications, Rachel.
Hey.
And I'm Lynn, co-founder of Petite to Queen. And let's get started. And Rachel, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. So when it comes to having a work-life balance, the very first thing that you need to do is set your boundaries. And you would start by defining your work schedule. Figure out what your work hours are going to be. And that's, of course, going to be influenced by maybe what your company business hours are, or maybe you have more of a flexible schedule where you can work whenever you want. But figure out what time's going to work for you and how many hours you want to be working in a day, in a week, and in a month. So once you've done that, make sure that it fits with your other engagements, etc. And after you've done that, make it known. Tell your boss and your coworkers, but also tell your friends and your family. Make it clear when you are available to whom, so that you're not getting business calls when you're out with your friends and you're not having your family bother you when you're trying to work. Now, once you've made this schedule, stick to it. Don't respond outside of your work hours, because that just shows that your schedule is more of a suggestion than a rule. And finally, don't be a hypocrite about it. If you're not responding to other people's emails when you're not in your decided work hours, don't be sending emails during that time either. You're not supposed to be working. And more than that, respect other people's work schedules. If you've told people that you're available from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and somebody else says, okay, but I'm not available until 10 a.m., don't be trying to get in contact with them before 10 a.m. You have to respect other people's schedules just as much as you would like them to respect yours. Lynn, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I agree with your approach here. I think, like with everything, flexibility is a big part of certainly how I set my boundaries. And I normally do check my emails and any voicemails after hours and on weekends. For one thing, it allows me to reprioritize my next workday, as needed. And so rather than be blindsided in that work morning when I finally open an email or a message and discover something that really needed to be addressed as soon as I walked in the door, I'm sort of pre-armed. I'm forewarned, right? And at a certain point in the evening, I stopped checking my email. And one thing is that instead I check it first thing in the morning, or my voice messages, because if the schedule I have is just a little bit more flexible where I'm checking things. If I check it too late in the evening, I could end up getting something that just makes me, angry, or it gets me, it somehow triggers some kind of an emotion that affects how I rest that night. And there's nothing I can do about it until the morning anyway. So what I find is that, after about 9 p.m., I don't look at my emails or check my voicemails, and I do let it go and I check it first thing in the morning. But, once again, I think that what Rachel's point is about setting your boundaries is still very important, and then how you adjust your schedule to that. Amanda, what are your thoughts?
Well, I really do think that you and Rachel both made all the points that I really wanted to bring up. I just want to reiterate that you should be firm about your schedule and about when you are and are not available. And that can depend on how flexible you are. As you mentioned, Lynn, your schedule is much more flexible than other people's schedules might be. But it is important to be firm and always to respect your coworker schedules, but also respect your own schedule as well.
Well said. Well said. And Amanda, it looks like you're on a roll. You want to talk to us about this, the next slide on maintenance?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think that now that we've defined our boundaries and work schedules, we should look at how we can stick to this schedule. And one of the first things I want to address is working late. In the last few weeks, I've been working extra hard to actually stop working at 5 o'clock p.m. I'm the kind of person who will just keep working late into the night if someone or something doesn't stop me. A few weeks ago, I decided to force myself to stick to my work schedule by always attending the 5:45 classes at my gym. In order to attend those classes, I need to stop working by about 5:10 at the latest, so I have enough time to get ready and drive over there. This kind of kills two birds with one stone. On the one hand, I'm forcing myself to work out consistently, which has been a goal of mine this year, but I'm also forcing myself to stop working at a certain time each day. The classes are held Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, but I stick to the schedule on Mondays and Fridays as well. This helps me stop working too late into the night. You can try a similar tactic in giving yourself a reason to stop at a specific time each day. It's also important to stick to this in terms of responding to work emails or other messages. And I'll admit, like Lynn, I do sometimes look at my work email one last time after dinner or once or twice over the weekend, but I'm adamant about not responding to those messages. My time off is my time off, and responding to those messages is just the first step in suddenly working after hours. A good idea is to make yourself unreachable, but within reason. I purposefully do not have my work email set up on my phone. I don't want those notifications distracting me when I should be doing something else. But of course, if something is truly urgent, people can text me or message me on Facebook. But I try to keep my work life and my work communications separate from my personal life and my personal communications. So Rachel, what do you think about maintaining your work-life balance?
You know, I really relate to your idea, Amanda, about being unreachable to an extent, right? So you mentioned being contactable by Facebook, and I'm okay with doing that a lot of the time, but in previous companies I've worked at, I've actually had a policy with myself to not be Facebook friends with my coworkers and bosses until after I've left, and then we can be friends on Facebook, and that's fun. And I also, in other situations, I would try not to give my personal email accounts because, like you, Amanda, I don't have my work email set up on my phone for reasons of not wanting to be distracted. And if I don't feel like I want them to be contacting me, I won't give them my personal email, but they will always have my personal phone number. So if it really is an emergency, they can call me. But emails tend to be for less urgent matters, and so I don't feel like they need my personal email. Lynn, do you have anything you want to add there?
Well, everyone's style and how they handle this is going to be different. And I will say that during family vacations or special events, I absolutely don't check my work email or my voicemail. Certainly, if it's a family vacation, I will check my email and voicemail once a day. But I've set up my out of office, and I have a backup plan in place, and I use that to really make sure that I'm separating myself so I can truly enjoy my family time in our vacation. So that's the only thing I'd like to add here as we move on to working from home. And I'm going to take this one. Um, I've worked from home, from my home office, I should say, for over a decade. And even before that, I maintained a home office for added flexibility. And when I transitioned to full time, I thought it would be easy, and that but I did discover there were a number of changes I needed to make, and that included the fact that got sort of this cabin fever, of not seeing people throughout the day. My office space was not actually properly equipped for a full-time home office job when I was working there every day. And I purchased file cabinets and some various supplies to really create an efficient working environment. And that's one of the number one things when you're working from home is having that working environment, so you can stay focused and maintain your discipline in the office. So, one of the things too is that working at home, you have to engage with your family or your partners or whomever you live with. Maybe it could be your neighbors who have very different hours and they're noisy at the wrong time. But it became easier for me to go back to my office, like after we would have our family dinner, and I could work a little bit longer in the day, and that really wasn't a good idea, right? So even when I had the support of my family to uh, for my quiet time, my focus time at work, It was definitely an issue for me to sort of look at that tendency to work well into the night, and that was something I needed to correct on my end. So let's see, Amanda, what are your thoughts about working from home?
Well, you made a lot of really good points, Lynn. Um, I do like the idea of creating a separate workspace, and that is very helpful for most people that do work from home. But this can be very difficult depending on your living situation. For example, I live in a one-bedroom apartment, and both my husband and I work from home. He has a desk in the corner of our living room, and that's his workspace, but my workspace is the kitchen table. For me, leaving work means walking 5 steps to my couch. For that reason, I try to never work on my couch. It might be comfortable, but I need to keep that space separate from my workspace. Putting home on hold is also very important. In my case, I make sure that I'm not doing chores during the day. For example, I don't do the laundry while I'm working. And that's not just because the washer and dryer are 5 feet behind me where I'm sitting all day. Leaving chores for the end of the day makes it easier to keep that separation and to be fully focused on work when you need to be. I have a pretty good handle on keeping these two spheres separate. However, sometimes I do just need a mental break in the middle of the day, and sometimes I will purposefully do a small chore just to clear my mind. I might do a little bit of dishes or fold some laundry. Nothing too time consuming, but enough that I can clear my mind a little bit. It's also important to note whether working from home makes sense for you. I have a friend who has told me that working from home is difficult for her. It can be hard to motivate yourself and to focus on your job when there are so many distractions at home and no one around to really keep you focused on work. Working from home may be a skill that you need to learn or hone, and that may come from learning how to exercise control. Some people are naturally good at it. It depends on the person, but I think a lot of these tips that we have mentioned here can help. So, Rachel, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, Amanda, I think you and Lynn have done a great job here. Lynn did mention asking for cooperation from family members and other people you live with, and even neighbors. Something to consider, though, is that not everyone can understand what you're asking from them. So this might be small children. In my case, it's my cat, and she loves attention, and I also work from home a lot of the time. So when you have someone that you live with, human or non-human, who is less able to cooperate, you do need to take precautions there. You need to close a door if that's a possibility. Maybe you don't have a door and maybe your cat will just scream at the door like mine will. So you might need to find other methods. Keep them entertained. And in my case, when I'm doing something like being on a call or when someone needs to hear me, I make sure that I always use a headset so that the microphone will pick up less noise and that I can fully hear the people I'm speaking with. My cat sits and purrs behind my laptop or on my bed or wherever that may be, right? So I think that's just my final tip there for working from home.
Terrific. Okay. So, Rachel, how about if you take this next slide on keep your weekends?
Yes, do keep your weekends or whatever days you have off. Obviously, not everyone works Monday through Friday, but your days off are your days off. Take the time and take the effort to take your brain out of the office and be unavailable, like I've mentioned before. Your days off are for you, and people should not be able to contact you unless it's for an emergency, or at least they shouldn't contact you. So don't think about work when you're out of work, and don't talk about work when you're out of work. Obviously, it's okay. Work takes up a lot of your time. And if you spend 40 hours a week or so there and you want to tell your friends or family members about some of the things you're working on, that's fine. And it's okay when you have a little stroke of inspiration about what you might be able to do on a project that you're working on. But for the most part, this is your time to concentrate on other things that you don't have time for during the work week, or maybe don't. Talking to your friends, focusing on your friends' lives and having a good time with them and focusing on your hobbies and your chores or whatever else that you need to think about that the rest of your time you can't. And it also gives you a chance to catch up on your life. So Amanda doesn't do chores during her work day, and I think that's a really good policy. And it's obviously enforced when you work outside of the home. And this might be a good time to give attention to those things that you can't during the work week, like catching up on some chores, hanging out with friends, or catching up with hobbies, or maybe doing some volunteer work. It's just a chance for you to really become a whole person again. Lynn, do you have any tips about weekends and days off?
Well, I'm going to take a slightly different twist to this. My work has always been a really big part of my life, and my family has been incredibly supportive. And um, one of the things that we do is that we made a commitment to have family dinner when we had our daughter. And one way that, once again, to meet your sort of schedule, you go home so that you're there for, to get dinner ready. And when we're prepping dinner and getting everything set up, it was really an opportunity for us as a family to sort of debrief. I could share my workday, ask for some advice, and really sort of have this type of transition time. And then, once we sat down to dinner, then we really, really focused our attention on really other activities, um, upcoming events, family, friends. And so that buffer zone for me, even though this is not talking about a weekend, that really made a difference. And then I found that we applied that to weekends as well, because we'd have this little bit of time um, of, of just talking or communicating in the morning about sort of what was going on, and then I could leave that behind for the rest of the weekend and enjoy family activities. Amanda, do you have anything to add?
I do. I just want to mention that keeping your days off is very important, not just so you have a chance to enjoy other things and other people, but it can also leave you feeling more refreshed and more prepared for work when you do return to it the next day or after the weekend or vacation ends. Machines can't work all the time. They need breaks, and so do we. Giving yourself a chance to reset is better for you mentally and physically, and it'll benefit your work too.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said. And here we are, have a life. So, Amanda, you've just been talking about having a life. And so you want to go ahead and take this one.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I want to point out is, Lynn, earlier you mentioned having cabin fever when you would work from home. And that that is something that's so true. I definitely relate to that. I've had a lot of cabin fever being stuck in my little apartment working. And for that reason, I think it's very important to really enjoy your life when you're not working. You're not a work drone, and you are a person who needs to go out and have fun, go places, and visit with people. One of the hardest things is seeing family members who work so hard day after day, but then they don't enjoy life outside of that. You can enjoy simple activities like watching a movie or reading a book. You can take a walk, go to the park. You can meet up with family and friends. But you might also want to learn new things or enjoy something creative. You might play an instrument. You might paint, do crafts. You could learn a new skill. It doesn't have to be something that's useful in your career. It can just be because you find it interesting and you want to pursue it. I mentioned earlier that I'm using my recent goal of going to the gym multiple times a week to help enforce my work schedule. I've also been teaching myself piano and play my keyboard each night. That's something that I can do to make my life richer even when I'm not working. By having exciting activities, adventures, and interactions with others, you're giving yourself a chance to be happy and interested. You can't excel at your job if you're feeling burned out. Having a rich personal life will help prevent the burnout. You'll feel more fulfilled and in a better mood, and that will carry over to your work life. Rachel, what do you think about having a life?
Well, I think you hit a lot of really good points there. I think that, you've mentioned having cabin fever working from home, and I think that that can even apply when you're working at an office. When I was working in an office before, I would go from my apartment to the office, back to my apartment, back to the office. And those two places plus the roads I walked to get in between those places were all I really saw for a lot of the time. So I think something important is making sure that you do have some of those adventures. Try to go on a few weekend adventures each year. Just explore the like for more overnight things. And even if you don't have time to leave your immediate area, just take time to explore maybe the other streets and see what's going on around, and keep your eyes open. And if you've got something that you want to do that's maybe 20 minutes outside of your town, go and do it. um just explore, and you'll feel inspired and motivated and energized for your next work week, and also just for your life, because as Amanda said, you're not a work drone, and we're not just talking about being motivated to get your work done, but it's also being motivated to have a great time while you're here. Lynn, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, I've already said, my work is and has always been very important to me, but I don't allow it to define me. I have a wide range of interests and activities. Um, I mean, this time of year, I love watching holiday movies in the evenings after work. And, I do all kinds of different things. I wrap gifts during then. I knit. I work on other types of craft projects. It really gives me this creative outlet. And that gives you a fresh perspective. You guys have both talked about that, but sometimes we just you know, doing that it's almost like a detox, right? But you have these moments where it's like, whoa, I just got this great idea and I can use this, the next day at work. And it's because you weren't thinking about work and you were doing something completely different and your mind was working in a different way that it created this opportunity, this openness to get a new idea. So I think it's absolutely so important and it really rounds you out. So, with that said, what do we got? Staying fulfilled in both spheres. I mean, that's what I was just talking about, that creative outlet. And I think another thing I'm going to point out here is that it's really important to be mindful of your bandwidth. So, I sometimes find myself with 4 or 5 projects I've started at home, and I it's because and then I've got everything going on at work, and I realize that in both cases, I really just need to focus and on 1 or 2 get through those so that I can move on to the next. And that's one thing that I find that I can apply in both spheres. Um, and it's the same thing with work. I have to be very mindful of taking on extra projects or extra work or a volunteer project. I'm involved with a number of local organizations and I end up, it's like I have to manage. I'm on this board, I'm on this committee, and you know, I have to say no. I have to say no. I'm not going to join this board because I'm already on this committee and I can't, and I'm doing this on the other end and it's going to impact my bandwidth and it's going to just, be like this ton of weights. It'll be like being pressed, right? You just can't handle that. So be mindful of that. And I think it's so important to give yourself permission to be flexible, to pivot to another activity, um, to work an extra few hours during a crunch period and give yourself the flexibility and permission to say no. So, Rachel, what would you like to add?
I think that's all really great, Lynn, and I like what you're saying about being able to say no. A yes really means nothing if it's coming from a person who can't say no. So always keep that in mind. I think that the last point about being fluid with the ratio is really important because there will be periods when one sphere is just going to need more attention than the other, and it's good. That's fine. Be okay with that. Maybe you have a big project at work that you need to spend more time on, or you're trying to get a promotion and you're putting in a few more hours, or maybe you have something in your personal life that needs more time and so you have to cut back on your hours so you can focus on that. Whatever it may be, it's okay to be fluid based on what's happening in your life and just where you are in your life. These are really important things. What matters though is that it works for you and that you feel fulfilled as a whole person. Amanda, do you want to close us off here?
I do. I really want to expand on what you were just saying, Rachel. It's okay to not it's okay to not be able to have it all, especially not all the time. Sometimes you work more and have little time for anything else. It can be especially tough if you work more than one job or are attending school in addition to a job. Sometimes your job becomes particularly busy due to the time of year or a big launch that's happening, and you may have to work extra hours. On the other hand, sometimes you have lots of time on your hands and your career is kind of on hold or maybe even floundering a little bit. And that's okay. Don't be too hard on yourself. Be kind to yourself and accept that sometimes having it all is really just too much. It's okay to be more fulfilled at home sometimes and more fulfilled at work sometimes. And just be kind to yourself and and accept that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having it all can mean a lot of different things. So I think that's what we're trying to say here, right, guys? It can mean a lot of different things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you. Thank you to Rachel and Amanda. Thank you to all our members and guests who joined us for this installment in the Success at Work virtual mentoring series, and really for being part of the dialogue here at Petite to Queen. If you have a question or would like to suggest topics for discussion, please email us at jointheconversation@petitetoqueen.com.